The sterile light of the Galactic Genetic Council's main chamber reflected off polished marble floors, casting sharp edges on the faces of its delegates. Dr. Liam Hayes sat at the far end of the oval table, a holographic projection flickering before him, a spiraling strand of DNA. The meeting had dragged on for hours, punctuated by sharp words and thinly veiled threats. "This is not our concern," barked High Chancellor Morvain, his sharp features accentuated by his disdainful glare. "The Galactic Accord does not obligate us to interfere in the natural decline of alien species." Queen Celia of the Elvari Empire stood at the center of the room, her regal posture unbroken despite the weight of desperation that clung to her like a shadow. Her silver-blue skin shimmered faintly under the artificial light, and her crown of crystalline spires seemed to pulse with a faint, almost imperceptible energy. "My people are dying," she said, her voice steady but edged with a crackling undertone that betrayed her frustration. "The Elvari have survived millennia, endured wars, and built an empire spanning 100 systems. Now, you would let us fall into ruin because of politics?" Liam watched her, unable to look away. There was something magnetic about her presence, a blend of raw power and vulnerability that commanded attention. "The problem," said Morvain, leaning forward, "is that your empire's genetic collapse is a result of your own manipulations. It is not the responsibility of this council to fix your mistakes." Celia's glowing amber eyes narrowed. "You would lecture me on responsibility, human? Your species wouldn't have survived your own genetic bottleneck without outside intervention." Murmurs rippled through the room, but Morvain waved them away. "We will not provide aid. The council has spoken." Liam's gut churned as the Queen's expression hardened. Her pleas now met with a cold wall of indifference. He wasn't unsympathetic to her plight, far from it. The Elvari genome, renowned for its complexity, had fascinated him for years. But his position was tenuous. As the leading geneticist in the galaxy, he couldn't afford to alienate the council. The meeting adjourned, and the delegates filed out, leaving Celia standing alone in the vast chamber. Liam hesitated, then approached her. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low. She turned her piercing gaze on him, and for a moment, he saw a flicker of something raw beneath her imperious exterior. "Not yet, Dr. Hayes," she said, "but you will be." Liam's quarters aboard the Celestial Vanguard, the Council's flagship, were sparse but comfortable. He had just poured himself a glass of amber whiskey when the lights flickered ominously. Before he could react, a piercing alarm sounded, followed by a voice over the intercom. "Unauthorized entry detected on Deck 7. Security 2. The voice cut off abruptly, replaced by static. Liam barely had time to process this before the door to his room slid open. A group of towering Elvari soldiers, clad in sleek obsidian armor, entered. Their movements were impossibly fluid, their weapons crackling with energy. "What the hell?" One of them raised a hand, and a burst of blue light enveloped Liam. The world tilted sideways, and darkness consumed him. Liam awoke to the hum of a ship's engines. The air was cooler, tinged with a metallic scent. He was restrained, though not painfully, on a sleek examination table. His head throbbed, and his mouth felt dry. "Good. You're awake." The voice was unmistakable. Queen Celia stood at the foot of the table, her crystalline crown casting refracted light across the room. She had exchanged her formal robes for a more utilitarian suit, though her regal bearing remained unshaken. "You kidnapped me?" he rasped, his throat raw. "I gave you a choice," she replied coolly. "You made the wrong one. Now, you will help me save my people." Liam struggled against his restraints. "You can't force me to." "I can," she interrupted, stepping closer, "but I would prefer your cooperation. You are the most brilliant geneticist in the galaxy, Dr. Hayes, and brilliance is not easily replaced." He glared at her. "You're insane." Her expression didn't change, but her voice softened. "Desperation makes us all mad, does it not?" Liam fell silent. Days turned into weeks aboard the Aurealis, Celia's massive flagship. The lab they had provided Liam was a marvel of technology, outfitted with equipment he had only dreamed of. But it was also a prison, monitored by guards and surveillance drones at all hours. Celia visited often, her presence both commanding and strangely disarming. She was not the tyrant Liam had expected. Instead, she was deeply intelligent, her understanding of genetics rivaling that of some of his colleagues. "Your genome is collapsing because of inbreeding," Liam said during one of their heated discussions. "Your ancestors manipulated your DNA to enhance your psychic abilities, but they didn't account for long-term viability. It's like building a house on sand." Celia's jaw tightened. "And the solution?" Liam hesitated. "The only way to stabilize your genome is through hybridization. You'll need fresh genetic material, alien material." Her eyes bore into his. "Human material?" He nodded. "Your DNA is remarkably compatible with ours, but the process will be invasive." A tense silence filled the lab. Then she said, "Do it." As Liam delved into the Elvari genome, he uncovered anomalies that didn't make sense, traces of genetic markers that shouldn't have been there. When he compared them to human DNA, the similarities were startling. "Celia," he said one evening, finding her in the observation deck. She stood before a massive window, the stars outside stretching into infinity. "I found something." She turned, her expression unreadable. "Your genome," he continued, "contains human markers. Not just compatible sequences, actual markers, as if your species and mine share a common ancestor." Her eyes widened, the faintest tremor of shock crossing her face. "That's impossible," she whispered. "The Elvari have no origin myths tied to Earth." "Then someone's lying," Liam said. Before they could explore the implications of his discovery, the ship was thrown into chaos. A coup, orchestrated by one of Celia's high-ranking generals, sought to depose her and seize control of the Empire. Liam found himself caught in the crossfire, forced to choose between escape and loyalty to the woman who had stolen him from his life. But by then, the lines between captor and ally had blurred. The Aurealis shuddered violently, throwing Liam to the floor of the lab. The lights flickered, bathing the room in an eerie crimson hue as the ship's alarms blared. Through the comm system, fragmented voices barked commands, mingled with the chaotic sounds of battle. Liam pulled himself up, clutching the edge of a workbench. The ship was under siege, and he knew exactly who was behind it: General Varric. A hulking Elvari with an ego as towering as his stature, Varric had made no secret of his disdain for Queen Celia's plea for outside help. The lab door slid open, and Celia stormed in, flanked by 2 guards. Her crystalline crown was gone, replaced by a tactical visor that glowed faintly with data readouts. She looked different, fiercer, a warrior queen ready to defend her throne. "Dr. Hayes," she said sharply, "we're out of time." "What's happening?" Liam asked, his voice barely audible over the blaring alarms. "Varric has betrayed me. He's attempting to take the ship and the Empire with it." "And you came to warn me?" he said, incredulous. "I came to protect you," she corrected. "You're too valuable to lose." Before he could respond, an explosion rocked the ship, and Celia barked an order to her guards in their native tongue. Celia led Liam through the labyrinthine corridors of the Aurealis, the air thick with the acrid tang of scorched metal. The ship's defense systems were fighting back, but Varric's forces were overwhelming. As they rounded a corner, a squad of rebel soldiers appeared, weapons raised. Celia moved with terrifying precision. With a flick of her wrist, an energy blade materialized from a device on her forearm. She cut through the attackers with lethal grace, her guards covering her with suppressive fire. Liam, crouched behind a bulkhead, could only watch in stunned silence. "You're dangerous," he muttered when the last soldier fell. She shot him a glance, her eyes blazing. "And you're slow. Move." They reached an auxiliary hangar, where a small, sleek ship awaited. As they boarded, Celia's lieutenant, a wiry Elvari named Kalen, approached. "The main deck is lost," he said grimly. "Varric controls the bridge." Celia's jaw tightened. "Then we'll retake it." Kalen hesitated, glancing at Liam. "With respect, Your Majesty, perhaps you should leave the ship. Your survival is paramount." "No," she said firmly. "If I run now, the Empire is lost." Her gaze shifted to Liam. "But he will leave." "What?" Liam protested. I'm not abandoning you. You don't have a choice, she said, her tone softening. If Varric captures you, he'll kill you. And without you, my people have no future. Celia turned to Kalen. Take him to the relay station on Cyranus Prime. Wait for my signal. Kalen nodded, but Liam shook his head. I'm not leaving, he insisted. Celia stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Liam, you're a scientist, not a soldier. This is my fight. You've already given me a chance to save my people. Now, let me protect you. Reluctantly, Liam allowed himself to be led onto the transport ship. As the hangar doors closed behind him, he caught one last glimpse of Celia, standing tall and defiant amidst the chaos. The transport ship sped through hyperspace, carrying Liam and a handful of Celia's loyalists to safety. Cyranus Prime, a desolate moon on the fringes of Elvari space, was home to a secret research facility, a last-ditch refuge if the Empire ever fell. When they arrived, Liam was escorted to a sterile lab filled with advanced equipment. Kalen handed him a data pad containing Celia's genetic records. She told me to give you this, Kalen said. If she doesn't make it, you're to continue the work. Liam's stomach twisted. He had grown accustomed to Celia's commanding presence, her razor-sharp intellect. The thought of losing her felt strangely unbearable. As he reviewed the data, he uncovered something startling. The shared genetic markers between humans and Elvari were more than coincidence. They pointed to a deliberate manipulation, a single point in history where their paths had converged. Someone had engineered both species. But who? And why? 3 tense days passed before the comm system crackled to life. This is Queen Celia, her voice declared. The traitor Varric is dead. The Aurealis is secure. Kalen let out a whoop of triumph, and Liam felt an inexplicable wave of relief. Moments later, Celia's image appeared on the main monitor. She looked weary but unbroken, her sharp features softened by a rare smile. You're alive, Liam said, unable to hide the emotion in his voice. Of course, she replied. Did you doubt me? Not for a second, he lied. Celia returned to Cyranus Prime, where she and Liam resumed their work. But the coup had exposed fractures within her empire. Varric had allies, and they would not remain silent for long. We're running out of time, Celia said one evening, her voice tinged with exhaustion. The opposition grows bolder. If we don't present a solution soon, the empire will tear itself apart. Liam hesitated, then said, There's something you need to see. He showed her the data he had uncovered, the evidence of deliberate genetic engineering. This changes everything, she whispered, her amber eyes wide with shock. It might also explain why your genome is collapsing, Liam said. Whatever was done to your species, it wasn't meant to last. The implications were staggering. Someone, or something, had shaped the Elvari and humans into what they were. And now, the consequences of that manipulation were unraveling. Their research pointed to an ancient, long-extinct species known only as the Architects, beings who had seeded life across the galaxy eons ago. The genetic markers in both Elvari and humans were their signature, a remnant of their long-forgotten experiments. But why had they created the Elvari with such a fragile genome? And why had they vanished without a trace? As Celia and Liam delved deeper, they uncovered fragments of an ancient signal, an encoded message buried in the Elvari genome itself. Deciphering it would require technology that hadn't existed for millennia. We need to find the source of this signal, Celia said, her voice steady despite the enormity of the task. If the Architects still exist, they may hold the key to saving my people. Liam stared at her, a mix of awe and dread. And if they're hostile? She smiled faintly. Then we'll give them a fight they won't forget. The signal was a puzzle, a cryptic strand of mathematical data encoded in the very essence of the Elvari genome. It pulsed in a rhythmic pattern, like a heartbeat reaching out across the millennia. Deciphering it required both cutting-edge technology and ancient knowledge that had been lost even to the Elvari. Celia and Liam worked tirelessly, their research shifting from pure genetics to the intersection of biology and astrophysics. The lab on Cyranus Prime was transformed into a hive of activity, buzzing with holographic models, deciphering algorithms, and the faint hum of alien machinery. It's not just a signal, Liam said one night. His voice filled with awe as he stared at the decoded fragments. It's a map. Celia leaned over the console, her amber eyes glowing with renewed determination. The data showed a star cluster far beyond the mapped regions of Elvari space, a cluster surrounded by dense nebulae and gravitational anomalies. The architects left us a trail, she murmured. Liam frowned. Or a trap. Celia smiled faintly. Only one way to find out. The Aurealis set course for the distant star cluster, its massive engines tearing through hyperspace. Celia had ordered the mission shrouded in secrecy, aware that her enemies within the Empire would see this as another reckless gamble. The journey took weeks, each passing day filled with anticipation and dread. Liam spent much of his time in the lab, refining the genetic models and preparing contingency plans for whatever awaited them. Celia, meanwhile, balanced her dual roles as scientist and sovereign, her focus unwavering despite the immense pressures of leadership. I envy your clarity, Liam confessed one evening as they shared a rare moment of respite in the observation deck. Celia raised an eyebrow. Clarity? You always seem to know what to do, even when the odds are against you. She laughed softly, a sound Liam hadn't heard before. Clarity isn't the absence of doubt, Dr. Hayes. It's learning to act despite it. He nodded, her words sinking in. The star cluster was unlike anything they had ever seen. A maelstrom of color and light, where stars burned in hues of violet and gold. At its center was a planet cloaked in swirling clouds, its surface hidden beneath an impenetrable storm. This is it, Liam said, his voice hushed. The signal's origin. The Aurealis descended into the storm, its shield struggling against the violent winds. When they broke through the cloud layer, the crew was greeted by a world of impossible beauty. Towering crystalline spires rising from an ocean of silver, their surfaces shimmering with strange energy. Celia and Liam led a small expedition to the surface. The air was breathable but heavy, charged with an almost oppressive sense of ancient power. The crystalline spires emitted a low hum, resonating with the same rhythm as the encoded signal. This place isn't natural, Liam said, examining the structures. It's engineered. Celia nodded. Then we're in the right place. At the base of the largest spire, they found an entrance. A doorway carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow when touched. Inside, the air was cool and dry, the walls lined with glyphs that glowed faintly as they passed. The team reached a central chamber, where a massive console stood at the heart of a circular dais. It was ancient yet functional, pulsing faintly with energy. This is it, Celia said, stepping forward. The heart of the architects. As she approached the console, the glyphs on its surface lit up, responding to her presence. Liam joined her, his mind racing with the possibilities. Together, they began to decipher the interface, piecing together fragments of a language long forgotten. It's a repository, Liam said, his voice trembling with excitement. Genetic data, historical records, it's all here. But as they worked, the chamber began to vibrate, the hum of the spires growing louder. A beam of light shot from the console, coalescing into a translucent figure, a towering being with elongated limbs and a shimmering, featureless face. The figure spoke, its voice resonating in their minds rather than their ears. Why have you come? Celia stepped forward, her voice steady. We are the descendants of your creation. Our people are dying. We seek your guidance. The figure tilted its head, as if studying her. You misunderstand. We did not create you. We merely guided your evolution. Liam's breath caught. Then who created us? The figure's light dimmed. That knowledge was lost in the great fracture. But your survival was our purpose. If your kind is failing, the fault lies within the design. Can it be fixed? Celia asked. The figure paused, then said, Perhaps, but the cost will be great. The architects had left behind a failsafe, a device capable of rewriting the genetic code of an entire species. But activating it would come with a cost. The changes would be unpredictable, potentially reshaping the Elvari in ways no one could foresee. It's a reset button, Liam said, pacing the chamber. You'd save your people, but they might not be the same afterward. There's no telling what they'd become. Celia stood silently, her expression unreadable. "This isn't just about survival," she said finally. "It's about identity. If we lose what makes us Elvari, is survival even worth it?" Liam met her gaze. "That's a question only you can answer." The figure spoke again. "You must decide. The device will rewrite your species or erase its flaws at the cost of its uniqueness." The room fell silent as Celia considered the weight of the decision. Before a decision could be made, alarms blared throughout the spire. A transmission came through. Varric's remaining loyalists had tracked the Aurealis and were preparing to attack. "They'll destroy everything," Celia said, her voice tight with urgency. Liam looked to the glowing console, its interface still active. "Then we need to act now." Celia turned to him, her expression hardening. "We'll defend the spire. But you must activate the device." Liam hesitated, the enormity of the task weighing on him. "Liam," Celia said, her voice softening, "I trust you. Save my people." The chamber trembled as explosions from Varric's loyalists reverberated through the spire. Celia gave Liam a final, piercing look before she and her guards sprinted toward the entrance, leaving him alone with the translucent figure and the ancient console. The device, a crystalline structure embedded within the console, pulsed with an otherworldly glow. Its energy felt alive, as though it were waiting for him to decide the fate of an entire species. "What happens if I activate it?" Liam asked, his voice wavering. The figure responded, its voice calm and inscrutable. "The Elvari will endure, but they will not remain as they are. Evolution will take its course, guided by the device's parameters. Their current vulnerabilities will be eradicated. And what if I don't? They will die. Slowly, but inevitably." Liam's hands hovered over the controls. The weight of the decision crushed him. The Elvari's identity, their history, their very essence. Was he about to rewrite it all? Outside the spire, chaos reigned. Celia led her loyalists in a desperate fight against Varric's forces, who had descended in sleek assault crafts, weapons blazing. The towering crystalline structures of the spire acted as natural barriers, deflecting much of the incoming fire, but the enemy's numbers were overwhelming. Kalen fought at her side, his energy rifle humming with deadly precision. "We can't hold them for long," he shouted over the cacophony. Celia deflected an energy bolt with her forearm blade, her movements as fluid as a dance. "We don't need long," she said, slicing through an enemy soldier. "Liam just needs time." But deep down, she knew this battle was more than a stalling tactic. If Liam failed, or worse, refused to act, her people's extinction would be assured. Liam stared at the console, sweat dripping down his temples as his mind raced. The translucent figure watched him silently, its ethereal presence neither comforting nor pressuring. In his head, Celia's words echoed, "I trust you. Save my people." But what if saving them meant destroying everything that made them who they were? "I need more information," he muttered. The figure tilted its head. "You seek certainty. But in creation, as in evolution, certainty does not exist. Only choices." Liam closed his eyes. His training as a scientist had prepared him to deal with the unknown, to embrace the chaos of discovery. But this was something else entirely. He exhaled sharply, his hands trembling. "Fine," he said aloud. "If we're doing this, we're doing it right." Liam entered the final sequence, his fingers flying across the console. The crystalline device began to hum, its light intensifying until the entire chamber glowed with a radiant brilliance. As the energy surged, the figure spoke again. "The process has begun. There is no turning back." Outside, the spires pulsed with a rhythmic energy, sending shockwaves through the ground. The attacking forces stumbled, their ships faltering as the strange energy disrupted their systems. "What's happening?" Kalen shouted, shielding his eyes from the blinding light. Celia looked up at the spire, her heart pounding. "He's done it," she whispered. The energy wave expanded, sweeping across the battlefield and into the skies. Celia felt a strange warmth wash over her, followed by a deep resonance within her very bones. For a moment, she thought she heard voices, distant whispers from ancestors long gone. The energy wave subsided, leaving an eerie stillness in its wake. The battlefield was silent, the attackers stunned and disoriented. Celia looked around, realizing that her soldiers were standing taller, their wounds visibly healing, their expressions filled with a newfound clarity. What is this?" Kalen asked, his voice tinged with awe. "It's the beginning," Celia said, her voice trembling. She could feel it too, an awakening deep within her genetic code, as though dormant parts of herself had come alive. The Elvari were changing. Inside the spire, Liam collapsed against the console, his strength drained. The translucent figure faded, its task complete. "It's done," Liam muttered. "But what have I done?" Celia appeared moments later, her expression a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Liam," she said softly, kneeling beside him, "you saved us." He looked up at her, his eyes heavy with doubt. "Did I? Or did I just replace your people with something else?" She reached out, her hand resting on his shoulder. "We're still Elvari, but now we have a future." As the Aurealis departed the strange world, the crew reflected on what they had witnessed. The spire's energy had transformed not only the Elvari, but also their understanding of themselves. In the days that followed, Liam continued his research, documenting the changes in the Elvari genome. The process was far from over. The transformation would take generations to fully manifest. Celia, now more than ever, was determined to unite her people. "We have been given a second chance," she told her council. "But with it comes the responsibility to honor our past and shape our future." Liam stood at her side, knowing his role was far from over. The architect's signal had revealed one truth, but countless questions remained. Who had created the architects? What had driven them to guide the evolution of so many species? And most importantly, what awaited them beyond the stars? The transformation of the Elvari sent ripples through the galaxy. News of the energy wave and its effects spread far beyond the Elvari Empire. Reports from traders, spies, and adventurers described Elvari soldiers with enhanced abilities, wounds healing in seconds, and new technologies derived from their altered biology. But the rumors also carried a darker undertone. Factions within the Elvari were not united in their gratitude. Celia's court, already strained by political fractures, became a war zone of ideological debate. Some saw the transformation as divine intervention, a gift from the gods, while others deemed it an abomination, a betrayal of their ancient traditions. "Your Majesty," Kalen said during one heated council meeting, "the Rift Council is demanding an audience. They represent millions who believe the architect's device has defiled our heritage. If we don't address them, the dissent could become rebellion." Celia, seated on her crystalline throne, remained composed, though her eyes burned with intensity. "Then they will have their audience," she said, "but I will not bend to fear. The survival of the Elvari is not up for debate." The audience with the Rift Council began as a formal affair, but quickly devolved into chaos. The council's leader, an elder named Livor, accused Celia of forsaking the Elvari's identity. "You have made us something unnatural," Livor said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We are no longer Elvari. We are monsters, corrupted by the hands of a long-dead race." Celia rose from her throne, her voice calm but unyielding. "The architects did not corrupt us. They saved us from extinction." "Saved?" Livor spat. "At what cost? My daughter has not been the same since the transformation. She dreams of alien skies, hears voices that do not belong to our people. What did you unleash upon us?" The room erupted in shouts, and Celia's guards moved to intervene. But before they could, a deafening explosion rocked the chamber. The Rift Council had brought more than grievances, they had brought weapons. The uprising spread like wildfire. Factions loyal to the Rift Council launched coordinated attacks across the Empire, targeting military outposts, research facilities, and even civilian centers. Celia's newly enhanced soldiers proved formidable, but the war was more than physical. It was a battle for the soul of the Elvari. The transformation had awakened abilities in some that defied understanding. Telepathy, precognition, and other psychic phenomena began to manifest, leading to fear and suspicion among those who remained unchanged. "It's as if the device unlocked something buried deep in our DNA," Liam explained during a strategy meeting. A latent potential the architects intended to activate one day. But the process is uneven. Some adapt quickly, while others struggle. Celia listened intently, her gaze distant. And the voices Livor mentioned? Liam hesitated. It's possible they're not hallucinations. The device might have created a connection, to each other, or to something beyond. Her expression hardened. If that's true, then we must understand it before our enemies do. Liam proposed a daring plan. Return to the Spire world and recover more data from the Architect's archive. The initial activation had unlocked only a fraction of its knowledge, and deeper answers might lie within. It's too dangerous, Kalen argued. The Rift Council's forces will expect us to return there. We don't have a choice, Liam countered. If the voices and visions are part of the transformation, we need to know why. Otherwise, the Empire could tear itself apart. Celia made the decision. We go, but this time, we're prepared for war. The Aurealis approached the Spire world under heavy escort, its fleet bristling with weapons. The planet's storms were even more volatile than before, and the spires pulsed with a strange, erratic energy. As Celia and Liam led the expedition back into the central chamber, they found it had changed. The glyphs on the walls were brighter, their patterns more complex. The translucent figure reappeared, but it was not alone. This time, multiple figures emerged, their forms more defined than before. They were the remnants of the architects, holographic intelligences that seemed aware of their surroundings. You return, one of them said, its voice resonating with authority. The awakening is incomplete. You have questions. Celia stepped forward. What did you do to us? Why are some of my people hearing voices? Seeing things? The transformation has opened the neural pathways we designed but never activated. Your people were meant to be connected, not only to each other but to the fabric of the cosmos. Liam's heart raced. A hive mind? The figure shook its head. Not a hive. An orchestra. Each individual unique, but part of a greater symphony. The voices you hear are echoes of that connection. As the architects explained the deeper purpose of the transformation, alarms blared throughout the spire. The Rift Council had followed them to the planet, bringing a fleet of stolen warships. Celia cursed under her breath. They mean to destroy the spire and everything in it. We can't let that happen, Liam said. The archive is the only chance we have to stabilize the transformation. Then we fight, Celia said, drawing her blade. The battle outside the spire was ferocious. Celia's forces, bolstered by their new abilities, fought with unmatched ferocity, but the Rift Council's ships outnumbered them. Inside, Liam worked frantically to download as much data as he could from the archive. The holographic figures watched him, their expressions inscrutable. You risk much for knowledge, one of them said. It's the only way to save them, Liam replied. Perhaps. Or perhaps it will destroy them. As the battle reached its climax, Celia made a fateful decision. Realizing the spire's energy could be harnessed as a weapon, she ordered her forces to fall back. Celia, you'll kill yourself if you trigger that energy wave. Liam shouted. She smiled faintly. If it saves my people, it's a price I'll gladly pay. Before Liam could stop her, she stepped into the heart of the console, merging with its energy. The spire erupted in light, sending a massive pulse that disabled the Rift Council's fleet and shattered their forces. When the light faded, Celia was gone. The Elvari Empire mourned their queen, but her sacrifice united them. The energy wave had not only ended the uprising, it had completed the transformation. The Elvari were no longer the species they had been. They were something new, something more. Liam, now the reluctant hero among them, dedicated himself to understanding the legacy Celia had left behind. But even as he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't truly gone. In the quiet moments, when the stars stretched endlessly before him, he thought he could still hear her voice, an echo in the symphony of the cosmos.